Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive, where we'll be unlocking the secrets to building better habits.
That's right. And we're going straight to the source for this one.
Yep, we're cracking open Atomic Habits by James Clear, a book absolutely packed with strategies to make those big and small changes stick.
Really insightful stuff. Ready to upgrade those daily routines and make some real progress?
Let's do it.
It's incredible how much those small everyday things shape our lives.
Absolutely.
Atomic Habits really digs into the science of how tiny changes can actually lead to remarkable results if you apply them consistently.
It's not about some overnight magic, right?
Nope, it's about those tiny 1% improvements.
I love that, those 1% improvements. It just makes those big goals feel a little less overwhelming.
Right.
Instead of trying to change everything all at once, you focus on making these small tweaks that add up to something bigger.
Exactly. Like, think about investing for a second. You put a little money in the bank each month.
Doesn't seem like much at first.
Yeah, but then with consistent contributions and the whole compound interest thing,
You end up with a nice little nest egg down the line.
it's the same idea with habits.
Okay, so small wins, consistency, I'm with you. But Clear also talks about something called the plateau of latent potential. You know those times when you're putting in the work but not seeing those results right away?
Oh, yeah, that feeling stuck, we've all been there. It's easy to get discouraged when it seems like your hard work isn't paying off.
So how can you tell if you're on that plateau, and more importantly, how do you push through it?
Well, first, you got to understand that the plateau of latent potential is actually crucial for success, because giving up too early can totally sabotage you.
So what's the secret sauce to busting through that plateau and actually seeing results? I'm all ears.
Okay, picture this. You're trying to melt an ice cube, you apply heat for a bit, nothing seems to happen, but
Boom.
at 32 degrees, it all changes and that ice suddenly melts. The plateau is like that time when you're building up the heat.
I see. It's about trusting the process, staying consistent even when you don't see results right away.
Exactly, because that breakthrough, it often comes when you least expect it.
Okay, I love that analogy. It makes a lot of sense. But it also takes a lot of faith, right?
Absolutely, and that's where Clear's idea of shifting your focus from goals to systems really comes in.
Instead of getting hung up on the end result.
Right, you focus on building a system that supports the habit you want.
Because ultimately, the system is what drives the results.
Right on.
Okay, so let's dive into these systems. How does Clear break down the whole process of building them?
He introduces this thing called the 4 stages of habit formation. It's like the foundation of any habit you're trying to build or break.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What are these 4 stages?
Cue, craving, response, and reward.
All right, break those down for me. What's a cue?
Think of it like a trigger.
It kicks off the whole habit cycle.
Exactly. It's that bit of information that predicts a reward.
It could be anything, right? Like the smell of coffee in the morning.
Exactly. Or that notification from your favorite app. Your brain's always scanning for these cues, even without you realizing it.
It's like our brains are little reward-seeking machines. Okay, so there's the cue. Then what?
Then comes the craving. That's the desire you feel when you spot that cue. Like, seeing that notification pop up might make you crave that little dopamine hit you get from social media.
I feel that. So then we take action. That's the response.
You got it. The response is the actual behavior, what you do to satisfy the craving. Scrolling through your feed, taking a bite of that cookie, hitting the snooze button, you name it.
It's all about getting that payoff at the end, the reward.
Right. The reward is what makes it all worthwhile and reinforces the habit. It could be a feeling of relaxation, the taste of that cookie, or maybe just those few extra minutes of sleep. And that reward, it makes you more likely to repeat the whole cycle again.
So if any of those pieces are missing, the habit's less likely to stick.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to get into reading before bed. You put a book on your nightstand, that's your cue. But if you're not really craving that quiet time, are you really going to reach for it?
Probably not.
And if the book's a total snooze fest?
No reward.
Right. You won't get that good feeling that makes you want to pick it up again.
Makes total sense. It's like a recipe. Got to have all the right ingredients for it to work. But knowing the ingredients is just the first step, right?
Absolutely. The habit loop gives you this awesome insight into your behavior, but the real magic happens when you use that insight to create habits that work for you.
You know, I'm already feeling like I have more control over my habits just by understanding this framework. It's like I'm seeing my routines with a whole new level of awareness.
That's great to hear. And that awareness is key because, as we'll explore, there's so much more to it than just willpower. We'll dive into how our environment plays a huge role in shaping our habits next time.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much power we have when we understand those habits. But it's not just about willpower, though, is it?
Atomic Habits really dives into how our environment shapes those habits. It's about setting yourself up for success.
That makes sense. If my phone's right there while I'm working, forget about it. I'm getting distracted by every notification. But if I put it in another room,
You can actually focus.
yeah,
Yeah.
way longer. So it's about making those cues for good habits really obvious, right?
Yeah.
And hiding the cues for the bad ones.
Exactly. Think about those supermarkets putting all the candy and snacks right by the checkout line.
Oh, yeah, totally.
They're playing on that impulse, right? Those cues are staring you in the face, but we can use that same idea to our advantage.
Okay, so how do we do that? Design our environment to support those good habits. Where do we even begin?
One strategy that Clear talks about is habit stacking. It's about linking a new habit to one you already have.
So build on something you already do
Exactly. Like you already make coffee every morning, right?
every day.
So you could stack a minute of meditation onto that. After you brew your coffee, you meditate. The old habit becomes the trigger for the new one.
I love that. It's so much easier to build on something you're already doing. Kind of like adding another brick to an existing wall.
Makes it more likely you'll actually do it too.
Right. Speaking of making things easier, didn't Cleared have a strategy for that too?
Oh, yeah, the 2-minute rule. It's all about beating that initial resistance we feel when starting something new.
I am all about making things easier. So break it down for me. What's the 2-minute rule?
Okay, let's say you want to start exercising. Instead of committing to a whole workout, you just put on your workout clothes for 2 minutes.
That's it.
The point is to make it so easy that you can't say no. Anyone can do anything for 2 minutes.
It's brilliant because once you get started,
You're more likely to keep going. That 1 minute of meditation might turn into 5.
or just putting on those workout clothes might get you to actually work out.
It's all about building momentum, those tiny actions.
Okay, so we've got the environment working for us. We're making it easy to start those good habits. But what about when our motivation just tanks? How do we keep going, especially when things get tough?
That's where understanding rewards is huge.
Rewards. Okay, so make those good habits enjoyable.
Exactly. Remember that reward stage of the habit loop. We naturally want to repeat the things that feel good.
Okay, I'm all for enjoying things, but how do you make saving money or eating healthy, fun? That's not exactly instant gratification.
Well, you got to get creative and tap into the power of immediate rewards. So you're trying to cut back on spending instead of focusing on financial freedom way down the line.
Which feels like forever away.
Yeah, you create a system of smaller rewards. Every time you resist that impulse purchase, you transfer that money into a dream vacation fund or something.
Ooh, I like that. So every time you make a good choice, you get a little reward.
Yeah.
Much more motivating than just saying no to yourself all the time.
It doesn't even have to be money. Maybe you watch an episode of your favorite show or read for a bit longer. The key is to make those rewards work for you.
Okay, I'm on board with that. It's funny. I've noticed that having a workout buddy or joining a group with similar goals really helps me stay motivated. Like having that support system makes a big difference. Does Clear talk about accountability?
Absolutely. He actually shares this great story about a guy named Brian Harris who made this habit contract with his wife and trainer to help him lose weight.
Oh, wow, a contract. Like a legally binding thing.
Well, it included specific actions and, get this, financial penalties if he broke the contract.
Whoa, serious stuff. Did it work?
It did. That external accountability plus the structure of the contract pushed him toward his goal.
That's wild. I guess those external factors can really make a difference, especially when our own motivation isn't enough. So we've talked about environment, making things easy, rewards, accountability. It's fascinating how it all fits together. But as we dive into all these strategies, how do we figure out what actually works for us?
Yeah.
We're all different.
Right. That's where understanding your own strengths and weaknesses comes in. Clear argues that your genes don't determine your destiny. They highlight your areas of opportunity. It's about aligning your goals with your abilities.
So instead of trying to fit into some mold that doesn't work,
You embrace what you're good at.
it's like finding the current and going with the flow instead of fighting against it.
Exactly. But even when you find your flow, you still need discipline and consistency. And that brings up a really interesting point Clear makes about boredom in mastery.
Wait, boredom. You're telling me successful people get bored too?
Oh, absolutely. Clear argues that boredom can be a major roadblock. As those habits become routine, they become less exciting. But the people who master something, they stick with it even when it's not fun.
So it's about being disciplined enough to show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it. Embracing the mundane moments, sticking with the process. Easier said than done, though, right?
It takes effort, for sure. But Clear offers some great tips for staying engaged, even when that initial excitement fizzles out. He talks about the power of variable rewards, which is actually a big thing in psychology.
Variable rewards. I'm not familiar with that.
Think about things like gambling or social media
Oh, okay.
or video games. They all use variable rewards to keep us hooked. You never know when you'll win, get that next like, or level up. That unpredictability makes us want more.
I see how that works in those contexts, but how do we use that for everyday habits? It's not
Yeah,
like we can just add randomness to everything we do.
right. It's not about random chance, exactly. But Clear suggests that working on challenges that are just hard enough can actually make things more interesting and keep you going.
So it's like finding that sweet spot where you're challenged but not overwhelmed, that Goldilocks zone for habit formation.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. Sticking to your routine most of the time, but also mixing it up with little challenges to keep things fresh and exciting.
This is all so insightful. It seems like building better habits isn't just about willpower. It's about understanding why we do what we do, creating the right environment, and finding creative ways to make those good habits stick.
You nailed it. It's about working with your brain, not against it.
We've been diving deep into the psychology of all this, but I'm curious about real-world examples. Does Clear offer any stories about how these principles have been used in action?
He does. He talks about the National Cash Register Company back in the late 1800s.
Okay, so way back.
The founder, John H. Patterson, had a problem with employees stealing from his saloon.
Not good for business.
Then he found this invention called Ritty's Incorruptible Cashier, basically the first cash register.
So instead of trying to make people be honest, he changed the system itself.
Yeah. The register locked the money and receipts inside after every transaction, made it almost impossible to steal. Patterson was so blown away by this thing that he bought the whole company,
Wow.
turned it into the National Cash Register Company, which became huge.
That's such a cool example of how changing the environment can really impact behavior. You don't always need a complicated solution.
Sometimes a simple change is all it takes. Clear also talks about Procter & Gamble trying to improve hand-washing habits in Pakistan.
Oh, interesting. How did that work?
Well, they realized that just giving away free soap wasn't enough. People knew washing their hands was important, but they weren't doing it consistently.
So information alone doesn't always lead to lasting change.
Exactly. So Procter & Gamble worked with researchers and tried a different tactic. They gave out this premium soap called Safeguard, which people in Pakistan thought was super fancy.
Okay, so they made the behavior itself more appealing. It's not just about telling people what to do, it's about making it enjoyable to do it.
Exactly. And it worked. Cases of diarrhea dropped by over 50%, pneumonia by almost half, and skin infections went down by a third.
That's amazing.
But here's the even cooler part. Years later, over 95% of the households that got the soap still had a designated hand washing spot. That's a real change.
Wow, so those small tweaks, like making a habit more enjoyable, led to these long-lasting improvements. Pretty powerful stuff.
Really shows you that when you understand how people work, you can make some amazing things happen.
We've talked about all these external factors, but what about those habits that are more about internal discipline?
Yeah.
Like staying focused, handling those tough emotions, resisting distractions. What about those?
That's where mindfulness comes in. Clear talks about psychologist Carl Jung, who said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Mindfulness is about bringing awareness to your thoughts, feelings, and sensations right here, right now, without judging yourself.
It's like snapping out of autopilot, becoming more aware of those mental patterns and habits.
Yeah. So many of our habits are unconscious, right? We eat when we're stressed, scroll social media when we're bored, procrastinate when we feel overwhelmed. Mindfulness helps us see those patterns so we can choose differently.
It's about creating that space to choose.
Exactly. Mindfulness helps us break free from just reacting all the time.
This is really interesting. It sounds like mindfulness is about a lot more than just stress relief or focusing better. It's about changing how we relate to our thoughts and emotions, which could impact, well, everything.
You've got it. It can help us build habits that really support our well-being. It's about knowing yourself so you can make choices that match your values and goals.
Wow, mindfulness can be a game changer. So how do we actually get better at this mindfulness thing? It always seems kind of abstract and hard to grasp.
One of the easiest ways is meditation.
I've heard so much about meditation, but I have to admit, it's always seemed a little intimidating. Like, is it only for monks and yoga masters?
No way. It doesn't have to be complicated. Even just a few minutes of mindful breathing each day can make a difference.
Okay, that seems much more doable. What exactly is mindful breathing?
It's simply paying attention to your breath as you breathe in and out. Notice how it feels the rise and fall of your chest, how the air feels cool going in and warm going out.
So, anchoring your attention to your breath in this moment. What's so special about the breath?
Well, it's always there, always changing. Plus, it's connected to both your body and your mind. So when you focus on your breath, you're actually training yourself to stay present, to just notice your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
Instead of getting lost in those thoughts, we're learning to just observe them. How does that help us with our habits, though?
When you practice this, you get better at noticing those automatic triggers that lead to your habits. You see them without getting hooked.
So instead of that knee-jerk reaction, there's space to make a different choice.
Right. Mindfulness gives you back the control.
This is powerful stuff. It's like mindfulness isn't just about reducing stress or improving focus. It's about fundamentally changing how we relate to our thoughts and emotions, which can have a ripple effect on every area of our lives.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool for cultivating habits that support your well-being. It's about becoming aware of what's happening inside so you can make choices aligned with your values and goals.
This deep dive into mindfulness has been really eye-opening. Are there any other practical tips for weaving mindfulness into our everyday lives?
Well, you can actually bring mindfulness into almost anything you do. Pay attention to how your feet feel when you walk. Savor each bite when you eat. Take a few deep breaths before answering that stressful email. It's all about finding little moments of presence throughout your day.
So it's about making mindfulness a part of life, not just another thing on the to-do list.
You got it. And remember, building better habits is a journey. Don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to do it all at once.
That's a great point. This deep dive has given us so much to think about. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they start their habit-building journey?
Just remember that even small changes can make a big difference over time. Be kind to yourself, celebrate those wins, and just keep moving forward one step at a time.
Love that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you've learned a lot and feel inspired to start building those habits that'll create the life you want. Until next time.